and that's pretty amazing. For those of you that are brand new, welcome to our dysfunctional family.
You will not be able to leave.
To serve man, it is a cookbook. So, if you're new, this is kind of what we do. We write story-driven music, and we travel around the country, and we drag a set and kind of a ragtag crew of a makeshift theater troupe, and costumes and props and photo booths, and we travel around and we sing songs about murder. And you guys show up and look amazing. But our schedule is insane. If you've looked at our tour schedule, basically every single night we're doing a show in a different city. So our days pretty much look like this. We get up way earlier than any respectable artist should. We drive to whatever city we're going to. We get there, we load all this shit in, we sound check, you guys show up, we try to put on a great show. Depending on how that goes, at the end of the show, we either drink a lot
Or
a lot. Go to bed way too late, get up way too early the next day, and do it all over again. So as you might imagine, when you're living in that sort of state of creative delirium, pretty cool stories happen. Wackiness ensues. So we want to share with you one story of said wackiness.
So last year, when we were doing the tour, one of the stops was in Chicago. And it was kind of a late night in general. And we had an early morning the next day. So when we rode out to our hotel, we were excited to actually get in, fall into bed, wake up really early, which that wasn't the part that we were looking forward to. The falling into the bed was the part we were excited about. So we rode out, we got to the hotel, we go to check in, and our rooms aren't there. So we talk to the guy, we're starting to go through the stages of grief. We bargain, we ask, can you please add some rooms? Is there anybody you can kick out of the room? What if we set off the fire alarm? Is that okay?
What is your favorite stage? Show of hands? I didn't really think there was an answer. I just thought if someone shouted out something really wacky, we'd keep it until tomorrow night.
I think somebody actually raised their hand. My favorite stage of grief is, yes, just the whole thing. I love it all. I love the bargaining. I love the acceptance. So
I think I like denial. I like the notion of, I want to remember the things the way I remember them, not the way they happened.
Yeah, but that can't last that long. You may like that stage, but it's got to move. So at some point we gave up on denial. And we got on our phones and started to look for another motel. That's two criterias: close and in the direction of the next city, and cheap as fuck. That's the only two. Beyond that, we're good. So luckily, there was a motel that fit the bill perfectly. So we all get back in the van and we ride over, and we get there, and right away you understand why it fit the bill. I mean, the direction is fine, that's whatever, but this was like in an abandoned parking lot under a freeway. It was you felt safe walking in. So, and it's one of those things where like they didn't even get like a full star for the motel. It was like kind of like maybe like an outline of a couple of little, you know what I mean? So.
What are you calling a horse?
It's a style, man. It's a style. So anyways, the stars, the half star. So we check in, and we go to our room. So him and I are sharing a room. We go to the door, we open it, and it's actually kind of a nice big space. It's not nice. It's a big space, and it's kind of like a sort of clean where it's not clean, but it looks clean from afar with the lights off. So we walk into the room and we're looking at it, and we're trying to figure out why, for such a big space, there's only one little tiny bed in the corner, and that's it. So we're kind of cracking up because, it's we look at each other, we're like, tonight is the night. We've known each other for a long time, let's do it. So.
At last the circle is complete.
So.
Get your fan fiction pens ready.
Get your pens.
Mr. Tinder gazed longingly at Mr. Storm and in his most rugged baritone
and gazed
inquired, "Which side of the bed would you like, honey?"
And Mr. Storm answered, "Let's try both and see. We'll just keep switching until it feels right." So you know, we're kind of getting ready for the night. And again, it's a sort of motel, like you go to the bathroom, so you put on your shoes again, walk over, come back, avoid the puddle. We get into bed and we're kind of butted up against each other, but we're cracking up. And we're like, let's turn off the lights. Let's see what happens. So we reach over each other lovingly to turn off the night lights for each other. It's foreplay for the foreplay. And as soon as we turn off the lights, we look up, and all around the mirrored wall with the camera red flickering on it, all around the walls and the ceilings, on every inch of this place, there are glow-in-the-dark hearts. We got the honeymoon suite at the shittiest fucking motel in Chicago. No, it was actually a really nice night, though.
So, then there's a knock at the door. And not the front door, the side door. What we call the serial killer hatch in my profession. And it's like, okay. And then there's a giggle from the other side of the door. A girlish giggle. A nice giggle. A giggle that, as two writers in the horror genre who write about murder, should know nothing fucking good is on the other side of that
door. Do not open that door.
But we both look at each other and said, I don't know, she sounds kind of cute, open the door. There's room for one more in this tiny bed, right? It ends up being, it's two of our crew members who are sharing the adjacent room. And they're giggling, and their lights are off as well. And when the door creaks open, we look into the dark chasm, and the glow-in-the-dark hearts continue. And we should say this, obviously there was nothing subtle about this, but it was more than just a lot of hearts. This was the endeavor of a mad person, because the hearts were laid out in geometric fucking precision. It was like the Matrix with hearts. And I read the Matrix. We looked at it and we said, oh my goodness, this is awesome. And chances are the hearts continued if we wanted to go check out the rooms beside us and scare somebody. But we had all we needed, and part of the reason for that was we looked around at the insanity, especially the precision and the care that someone took to create this gaudy masterpiece, and related to that person. We said, oh, this is kind of like what we do. We look at blank walls or a blank piece of paper and we go, let's make something that doesn't really need to be there. Doesn't really need to, in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word, exist. But we're gonna act like it's the most important fucking thing in the world. And we're gonna slave over it like mad people. And we're gonna sit there, and if one heart is a little bit off, we're gonna beat ourselves up over it. We're gonna tear it all down. We're gonna start again until it's fucking perfect, and it'll never be perfect. But that's the obsession of being an artist, right? And that's kind of what we do, and we both love it and hate it. So that's kind of a not so smooth segue into our second story. So I'm guessing, with the exception of maybe a couple of the new people here, have you heard our latest album, The Donner Party?
Yes.
Did you know about The Donner Party prior to us? So it's interesting, we had a stop in Toronto, and they don't teach it there. So
Canadians actually don't go to school. It's really strange.
The healthcare is great, but their lessons on cannibalism are really lacking. So we decided we were going to do the Donner Party, and all we really knew was it was a bunch of American pioneers that got stuck in the snow and ate each other. And that's enough to start. But then we got into the history, and we started just reading every book we could on the subject, and watching every documentary we could, and just amassing this pile of notes and a lexicon of strange words from the era and spellings and all this, and started laying our parts like the mad people we are. And really what we said was we want to do something that's historically accurate, entertaining, and is different than what we did with the previous year of American Murder Song. So in deciding to do it different, one of the things that we stumbled upon in our mad obsessive laying part work was we said, instead of just doing a straight up, like, here it sounds like 1846, which is when the Donner Party got stuck, we're gonna reinterpret it through our crazy fucked up lens. And it's gonna be, instead of an 1846 thing, it's gonna be as though the story was being told through a late 1950s, early 1960s television spook show, like all of the Twilight Zone. And we got in there and said, okay, here's our starting part. What songs or what stories from the history will make for the best set of songs?
In kind of putting this album together, we wanted to have, with these different songs, all these sort of B-movie sort of ideas. We had like the romance, we had the drama, we had the spaghetti western, but we kind of try to figure out what does this all amount to, and how do you finish this sort of Donner story in this Twilight Zone manner. And up to a couple of weeks before we actually recorded this, we had a very different ending to this album. What we're trying to do in thinking, okay, how does this Twilight Zone thing work? There's always a twist at the end, something that kind of changes it up. And we thought, let's go really big and weird, and let's make it into like a sci-fi spook fest, and just go bonkers, and it's gonna be the greatest Donner Party ending ever. So, in looking through the stories, we fixated on a story of a little girl named Patty Reed. She was 9 years old at the time, and why we liked that story is she had a creepy doll that she kept with her. Now, the reason she had it with her was when they were originally going through the trek they started in Missouri, they were gonna end up in Sacramento, and they got stuck about 200 miles away from Sacramento in the snow and spent months there. And that's where kind of all the bad shit went down. This is where they ate each other. This is where things just continually got worse and worse. And this is what they're known for. But on the way to there, they ran into a lot of problems on the way. And they started losing all their stuff. They got stuck in mud flats. They lost their animals. And they were told, leave everything you have behind. There's no room for error. And, everything is taking longer than it should. And we have to hurry up or we're going to get stuck in the snow, which they eventually did. During that time, she was told, get rid of your doll. There's no room for her. So instead of getting rid of it, she hid it in her dress and walked with it all the way to the camps where they got stuck and had it with her for 4 months there, and nobody knew she had it. And when she got rescued and got all the way to Sacramento, to the fort where they were received, she took out the doll and said, here's my doll. And it became a relic of the Donner Party. So we thought, okay, this thing is really hidden from everybody. How can we make this into a supernatural sort of story? So we thought, when she was rescued, this was the second rescue party that came to help people come out of the cabin lakes where everybody was frozen to Sacramento. They started climbing out of the hills and got stuck in an incredible snowstorm in the middle of the hills and could not move further. So they built a fire, but the fire was burning through the snow, but they were walking through about 20 feet worth of snow. So as the fire kept burning, it started sinking into the ground and created basically a snow hole. And they kept fire alive, and the fire kept going down and down and down until they were all basically on the bottom, on the ground, inside of a snow hole that's 20 feet up, climbing out to get more firewood so the fire doesn't die out, climb back in, and they're there for days and nights, and people are dying. So we thought, if we're gonna take this doll that's in this hole with this girl and make her this girl's protector. So our idea was, at night when everybody's falling asleep, the doll crawls out of the dress, opens her eyes, walks around, finds somebody who looks delicious, kills them, and in the morning, she's back in the dress, and everybody has food for another day. We thought this was the greatest fucking idea. We were like patting each other's backs. We thought it was such
like
a great
Donner Party Talkie Tina.
Yeah.
We were seeing the toys and the T-shirts. We're like, this is
poster.
a poster.
So we dreamt really big. So we wrote the song, and it was awful. It made no sense. It didn't follow anything. We kind of felt like, why are we going sci-fi? It makes no sense with anything that came before it. And when you're going through that process and you realize I just wrote something that does not work and doesn't make sense with what I just kind of set up, you double down. So we made it even crazier. We added UFOs, we added monsters.
This room's gonna need a few more hearts.
That's right. So we just went completely batshit. And every little draft that we did, the song got worse, and we got more and more determined. And we were like beating ourselves up with all these like crazy hands coming down from the top, climbing down, waking up the dolls. It made no sense. And at some point we had to look at each other and be like, we gotta let this go. You know, we gotta build a new room.
So we already had our recording dates booked, and we're realizing the finale of our concept album didn't work.
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second because we actually have been telling this story, and one of the craziest things that we kind of do, and in telling this story, I always think about it. We're still writing the songs, and we're in the studio in 2 weeks. So we booked, like, we're ready to go. We have our instruments, we have everybody ready to go. We don't have songs. Everything else is fine.
So we realized, shit, we gotta come up with something good that's satisfying, that concludes the album, because it should feel like a journey. It's about the Donner Party, and if you're listening to it, you should feel like you've gone on a journey, right? So we decided instead of going big, which is where our instinct was initially pulling us, we went very small. And we went back to the history books, and we ultimately stumbled upon what became the story for the song The Last Americans. We're gonna perform that for you tonight in just a little bit. So now when you hear it live, you'll have hopefully a new perspective of both what it took to get there and actually what it means. So the history lesson shall continue. So we went back into our notes, all the stuff we'd written down about the true stories of the Donner Party. And we decided upon what was the last two survivors in the camp, where those that lived were ultimately rescued from. About half of the people that made it to the camps ended up dying. Half made it to safety. And they were spirited out basically through a series of rescue missions. But the rescue missions were perilous. So people coming in to try to save the Donner Party, they were getting stuck and they were dying. So when the final rescue mission made it to the camps, they basically came through, they were over it already. And these were guys that were basically just trying to collect a bounty to go do it for the most part. They said, if you're fucking breathing, get up. We're going that way. We're not waiting behind. If we stay here, we're all gonna die. So if you don't wanna die, come with us now. And everybody but two people that could left. Those are our last two Americans that are the subject of the song, The Last Americans. The first of those two was Tamsin Donner. She was the matriarch of the Donner Party. Her husband George was kind of the elected leader of the group, which is where the group gets its name. She refused to leave because her husband George was at death's door. He couldn't move, and she did not want to leave him behind. So she said, I'm staying with my husband. She gave her kids to other people to take out, knowing it was a death sentence, that food was gone, it was hell, they were all at death's door, basically. So she said, I'm staying with my husband. She refused to leave. The second of our last Americans also refused to leave. He was Louis Caseberg. He's the villain of the Donner Party. He's our devil in camp. And he was generally disliked by all the other members. He was disliked for a myriad of reasons. Mainly, he was an asshole. beat his wife in front of everybody, didn't play nice, refused to lodge with everyone, hence the lean-to, where something's always cooking. And when it was all said and done, he boasted openly of cannibalism. Everybody else kind of either said, or they shied away from it, you know? He was like, shit, that's great eating. So, when the relief party said, Caseberg, you fucking asshole, we don't like you, but we'll rescue your ass, come with us now, he said, I'm good right here. And he stayed. Tamsin Donner, George Donner at death's door, and Louis Caseberg. And the rescue party rides off and leaves them there. That was the setting of our song, or that is the setting of our song. Tamsin is there, George dies, her and Caseberg have that final moment, and they both know that one of them is going to become food for the other, and they both know who. So The Last Americans really is our last waltz for Tamsin Donner. Caseberg ultimately did survive the journey. He did admit to eating Tamsin Donner, and there's some speculation as to whether he murdered her and then ate her, or just waited for her to die and then ate her, but he ate her. And that is our Last American song.
And even with that, just so you guys know, yes, there was speculation whether he murdered her or not, but he did murder her. And we know that, and you guys know that. So he murdered her.
Because the song tells us.
Because the song tells it to. There's even a lyric in there about a knife. So he definitely murdered her, and he definitely ate her. And when she kind of took her last breath and kind of started passing out in his lean-to, she did actually, you know, she's passing out, she looked up on the ceilings and the walls, and there were glow-in-the-dark hearts everywhere.
Because here at American Murder Song, we believe in historical accuracy.
And we leave no detail unturned.
Hope you guys enjoyed our little stories. Thank you again for being a part of the VIP experience. The show is going to begin in just a few minutes. Enjoy yourselves. We will demand this, though. When we come out here and start singing, if you're still sitting down, we're going to pull your asses up, and we're going to have our own little Last Americans, if you know what I mean. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, guys.